a Michigan-born farm boy who moved to Arizona in 1981. He lived and taught on the Navajo reservation for 12 years. Then he taught for 19 years in the inner city Phoenix. In addition, for 6 years, he worked as a riverboat pilot guiding tours down the Colorado River. Brad became interested in the history of the Whiskey Row when he would journey up from his home in Phoenix to visit Prescott. After moving here, he wanted to learn more about Prescott's history and especially Whiskey Row, with which he was enamored. Lo and behold, you can tell you where it was. Lo and behold, and to his surprise, there were no books solely about Whiskey Row. Hence, 6 years ago, he set out to write the book he wanted to read, which is now available, and it's called Prescott Original Whiskey Row. We have autographed books at the bookstore. If anyone's interested in purchasing one, you can go to the bookstore to get it. If you want it personalized, you'll have to walk back and have him personalize it if you want to have that done. And then right before we begin, he's going to do a follow-up book, which is the title of today's presentation. We would like to ask the audience to wait until the end of the lecture to ask any questions. So we'll have a Q&A after the lecture is completed, okay? Thank you very much, and here's Brad.
Gotta get hooked up here. Hello? You'll hear me. I'm not a shy guy. Well, did I do good bringing Danny Romero in? Yeah. A highlight of my week is I always show up at the Palace at 4 o'clock after I go to the archives. Danny saves me a seat, and he plays from 5 to 8 o'clock. So if you're ever in town on Friday, you can hear how good he is. He brings other musicians when he plays at the Palace, and they're really, really good. But I was sitting back there listening. I know his songs now, but I was sitting there thinking about Danny and his pink underwear. And I like that song. Well, I'm going to contribute a little bit. I don't know, I won't compare to Danny, but I got a little jingle that goes, let's go down, take me down. Let's go down to Whiskey Row. Let's go down, take me down to where the wild at heart go. Take me down, let's go down to Whiskey Row. Let's go down to where the wild stories grow. Oh, let's go down, oh, take me down to Whiskey Row. That's all I got. Thank you. Well, yeah, it was actually about 6 years ago. I made the commitment to research and write about Whiskey Row, like Brenda said. There were a lot of books that had Whiskey Row history in it, but no book that was like strictly about Whiskey Row, no comprehensive book. And my initial idea was to write this great big old fat volume, and submit it to a university press, like a comprehensive volume, that had all the history in one book. But then I got into it. I started going to the archives every time it opened, and I started to think, man, I'm going to die before I get this thing done. And then a publisher came along that made me an offer I don't refuse. And so I decided, once I accepted this offer, to write a series of books about Whiskey Row. And the first one that came out, like Brenda mentioned, was Prescott's Original Whiskey Row. And my idea with that one, I wanted to include the Great Fire of 1900. But I was uncovering so much material, and there's a word count limit. For this one, it was 45,000. And I had to leave stories out as it was. So I went right up until July 14th when the miners candle holder thing happened that I'll talk about. But so I decided the next book I would start with the fire Whiskey Row and just go as far as I could. But I'm uncovering so much material that my next book is going to be, it's going to center around the Great Fire of 1900. As I was researching the Great Fire of 1900, it took me a little while, but I made an observation that right after the fire, initially there was no attempt whatsoever to detail the fire. That came years later. And the reason that happened was, the two major newspapers, the Miner and the Courier, well, they were destroyed as well. So there really wasn't any newspaper available. And the first reports that came out about the fire are actually in the Phoenix Republican. So these guys didn't have time to go around and ask people, little details about the story, about the fire, and get some information on it. Those would come years later. Every 5 years or so, they would have people that would fight, who fought in the fire, people who witnessed the fire, would have a reunion like every 5 years, and then 10 years after the fire, 15, 20, 25, all the way up to 50, and they would tell their stories about the Great Fire of 1900, and that's where the legends came from. These stories started getting repeated, and that's how legends form. This quote's from the movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and one of the characters in there said, "This is the West, sir. When the legend becomes fact, print a legend." And that is so true about the Great Fire. I'm going to talk about those legends today. I'm sure you've heard of them. And then I'll give you my conclusions. When I weigh the evidence with the legend, I might say things like, this is what most likely happened or probably happened. If I can, I'll give you a definitive answer about some of those. There's the legend, of course, of how the fire started with the miner's candle holder. You've heard that one. We'll talk about that one. My favorite one, though, is about the palace bar. You've heard that one. About the fires approaching the palace. The patrons saw the fire coming and they wanted to save the bar, so they pulled it out, onto the plaza. And then they pulled out the piano. And the story is that the piano player started playing the Hot Time in the Old Time. I'll tell you, I can give you a definitive answer on that one. That was one legend when I started researching Whiskey Row, and I knew I had to write about it. I knew there were all these legends, and I'm going, oh my God, I hope I don't have to debunk these legends because they've been told for so long and they're so good, And that one, I especially didn't want to prove that one not true, but that's a good story. When I think about the fire of Whiskey Row, the fire of 1900, I think about pivotal moments in history, and I think about such things as Theodore Roosevelt. He called it his crowded hour. Then he took the Rough Riders up kettles in San Juan Hills during the Spanish-American War. That was a pivotal moment in his life. After that, he came home back to the States, and next thing you know, he was governor of New York, then vice president, and then he became the president in a short amount of time. So that was very pivotal for him. He said his career skyrocketed after that. Then I think about Old Tombstone. What would it be without the OK Corral? Those 30 seconds. Would it be even in existence if those 30 seconds at the OK Corral, that gunfight had to happen? I wonder. And then, of course, all the aftermath when Wyatt took his vengeance. So what was Prescott and Whiskey Row's crowded time? Well, it was for sure, without a doubt, the crowded 5+ hours of the Great Fire of 1900. Pivotal point for different reasons, because this was Prescott's icon event, like a demarcation point that forced choices. And those choices would change the history of Prescott until this very day. But at the time, the question was, after the downtown was pretty much wiped out, do we rebuild? You know, that question had to be asked. I mean, who would have blamed them if they would have thrown in the towel, called it quits, moved on? Because this fire, 4 blocks were destroyed, over 70 businesses were listed as lost. The more I research it, I'm starting to think it was more like 80, 90 businesses, you know, but at least 70, and only 18 of those received 50% or more of their total loss from insurance. Some didn't receive any insurance because they didn't have insurance. Most of them, if they got 20% of their money back, they were lucky. So there were a lot of banks in town giving loans at that time. The estimated loss was about $1.5 million. The lowest estimate I saw was $1 million. The highest was $2 million. So it's most often said it was $1.5 million. You put that in today's money, that's $4 or $5 billion. Somewhere between there. So it was a massive catastrophe. But with remarkable rapidity, the people of Prescott decided to rebuild, and with remarkable rapidity, they did build. There's the headline in mind was "There's no quitters in town." If anybody did throw in the towel, I never saw anything about it. So Prescott is the true phoenix of Arizona and Whiskey Row, and it truly rose from the ashes of flames. And I want to start with a little background, a little prelude. It's a musical day, so that sounds like something Beethoven or Rachmaninoff would have written, a prelude to a conflagration. But I'll put it in the key of 1864. We'll start there. We can actually go back to 1863, when Abraham Lincoln made Arizona territory of the United States, and he appointed John Goodwin, John Gurley at first, but he died, and John Goodwin as the governor of the territory, and then Richard McCormick as the territorial secretary. So they formed a party. They made their way west. They got into the Arizona territory coming in from the north. And they decided, instead of settling, or instead of establishing a territorial capital in a place that was already a settlement, like Tucson, they decided to start from scratch. They got down to this area. They saw it was semi-open here a little bit, you know, and it was in the Bradshaws and Sierra Peas, as Gil Gardner called it, Sierra Prias. And they decided to start from scratch here. They saw there were creeks here, and there were mineral strikes. So they thought, well, you know, while we're here, let's see if we can strike it rich, because this was like the new gold rush area, the central Arizona highlands. So they needed to get something up quick. There was no time to waste. The Civil War was still going on, and they wanted to establish Arizona's territory as a Union territory. And so they saw that the most biggest natural resource around was trees, lumber. And that was the quickest way to put up buildings. Now, there's stone everywhere too, but it takes a little more work to get a stone in a way that it can be used to build buildings. So there was no time to waste, and this man, Albert Noyes, saw an opportunity. He was in this area, he was mining. He learned that the territorial capital was going to be established here, and like I said, he saw an opportunity. He wrote his sister back east. He was a New Englander. He came out from New England during the gold rush of 1849. He was one of the many men who went out, tried to get rich in California, didn't make it, heard about the mineral strikes here, came back, came over here to the central Arizona highlands, and many of the Prescott men, that's what happened. They were 49ers. They went back, and then they came up this way. He wrote his sister back in New England, Maine. He wrote, "Certainly the chances of fortune and position are better here, and there's no aristocracy." So he and a man named George Lount was actually a member of the Walker Party, who had come out previously to explore the area. And he stayed in the area, and they went to San Francisco. They bought themselves a sawmill, and They brought it down the coast and around the Baja, and then up to Colorado, up to La Paz, and then they shipped it all the way across land. It was quite a journey. It was quite treacherous, as a matter of fact. It took a lot of fortitude to get this done, and they set up the Quartz Mountain Sawmill. Bits and pieces of it started arriving in September of 1864. They set up somewhere on Granite Creek, I think south of town somewhere, and they started putting out lumber for the buildings in Prescott. They were the main source of lumber for Prescott for a long time. There were other sawmills, but they really almost had a monopoly on it, especially out in Noyes. So as far back as 1869, people started worrying about this wooden town they were building. And they were already aware that one big inferno could wipe out the whole town. And in May 15th, they warned people to be careful, during the dry spells we have in the spring. They wrote, you all know how easy it is for the terrible element to destroy a wooden town. And here is what Prescott looked like in 1869. And you can see it's pretty sparse. This has sometimes been called the oldest known photograph of Prescott. To give you a little frame of reference here. There's the Diana Saloon here. That's where Hotel St. Michael sits today. So you got Montezuma Street here. Then over here you have Gurley Street. That is most likely the old Capitol building there, and appropriate for Prescott, I think. When the Capitol went to Tucson in 1867, it became a brewery, a beer brewery. So this would have been the Arizona brewery at the time. Let me get a little closer view for you. There's the Diana, where St. Michael sits today. That's Albert Noyes built the Diana there, and then you see the brewery over there. 7 years into its existence, a man came into town. This fellow right here, Sylvester Mallory, I guess that's how you pronounce it, a pioneer, and he came in and gave a report to the people of Prescott, and he found some